Okay with your Hi, good afternoon. This is the Planning and Land Use Management Committee. I'd like to call this meeting to order, please. I'm Jose Huiza, the chair of the committee. I've been joined by Councilmember Marquise Harris-Dawson and Councilmember Mitch Englander. On item number 10, we will note and file that item, please. Item number 3, we will move and approve on consent. And we could go to item number 6, please.
Sure, Councilman. Item 6 is the draft cleanup, green up ordinance submitted by the Planning Department. There's also an ordinance by Building and Safety on technical issues, and there's the CAO-CLA report answering 3 questions you requested at our last meeting.
Great, thank you. We heard this item a few weeks ago, and I think there were some clarifications that the committee needed from staff, also some questions that we needed answered. We'll go to staff first and have those presentations and then go to public comment.
If you like, you can hear Councilman from the Planning Department to give an overview of the ordinance, or do you want to hear from myself on the CAO-CLA report?
Okay, let's do this. Since we heard this item before, a brief overview from planning, and then from the CAO-CLA, a response to the questions we had at the last meeting. Welcome.
Okay. Good afternoon. This is Deborah Cahan with City Planning. Cleanup Green Up is an item that was heard in this committee a few weeks ago. It is the culmination of many years of public outreach with the Boyle Heights, Pacoima, and Wilmington communities. It's a response to the cumulative impacts that have occurred in these neighborhoods and is essentially a package of development regulations addressing items such as landscaping and setback and parking lot design, as well as support systems in place that includes what we've been calling an ombudsperson to enforce what is on the, to work with existing communities and provide support on the ground today. We have, when we came forth to you last time, we were asked to work with the CAO-CLA's office to respond to several questions, and I'll turn it over to Roberto to address those in more detail.
Sure, thank you.
Yes. Councilman, at the last meeting, I believe it was October 27th, you asked 3 specific questions. You wanted to know what a staffing plan and the budget and funding sources that would be needed in the 3 suggested pilot areas of Boyle Heights, Pacoima, Sun Valley, and Wilmington. The second question was a discussion on the ombudsperson position, whether it belonged and if it was appropriate in the mayor's office, and what would happen if the position was delayed to July the 1st, 2016. The third question was to provide a discussion on the differences of 2 health assessments. One is the health impact assessment, and the second one was the health risk assessment. So I'll give you individual responses to each of those questions. As you will see on page 2 of the report, the joint CAO-CLA report, we spoke and met with the Department of Building and Safety, City Planning, City Attorney, as well as your respective land use deputies. Building and Safety provided us with the data, and they estimated that a proactive code enforcement program would entail the need of 7 position authorities in the Department of Building and Safety. This is as a result of needing to survey 977 existing businesses within the 3 pilot areas. We also reached out to City Attorney. City Attorney indicated that they would need 1 Deputy City Attorney 3 position, should there be a need to prosecute the offenders in the 3 pilot areas. The second, the estimated cost of setting up this staffing program would be $1,020,000. CAO quantified the data. We included the salaries, the related costs, medical costs for the positions, and we've quantified each of those positions in the report and the salaries. The second question that you asked is about the ombudsperson position. That position is in the budget, in the current budget. It's in the Bureau of in the Bureau of Sanitation, and that position is funded through June 30, 2016. So that means that the position, if you wanted to extend it beyond that time period, that would need to happen during the budget deliberations next year, because the position is funded through June the 30th. So Councilman Fuentes wanted to know what would happen if the position was delayed to July 1st, 2016. So the answer would be that there isn't any funding past June 30th for that position. You wanted to know if it was appropriate, that position in the Bureau of Sanitation, given the duties and given the assessments that position, that individual would be in charge of. It does belong in the Bureau of Sanitation, and that is our finding. The third question was to provide an explanation as to the differences of the 2 health assessments, the health impact assessment and the health risk assessment. So we relied on city planning to provide us some of the prior examples of prior reports, and we determined that there are differences between the 2. The HRA is, simply put, a scientific tool. It is a quantitative tool relied upon by individuals with quantitative training, and the HIA is more of a qualitative tool that looks at holistic impacts. It will look at externalities, situations in neighborhoods, particularly social and more economic conditions that would not be necessarily issues that would rely on a quantitative analysis. You also asked us for an opinion from the city attorney as to which of these health assessments would be legally defensible. We consulted with city attorney. City attorney advised us that CEQA requires an HRA because we are dealing with what are called TACs in here, toxic air contaminants. So per CEQA, whenever you have toxic air contaminants, you are required to do an HRA. So city attorney simply noted that should the council or this committee wish to proceed with an HIA, that is a policy decision, but an HIA could not be done in lieu of an HRA. So you would have to basically do the HRA, and in addition to that, you would do the HIA analysis, but not in lieu of. And those are the answers to the 3 questions, Council.
Great, thank you, and thank you so much for that thorough review and for answering all the questions we raised. And you went to Cal, right?
I went to UC Berkeley.
You went to UC Berkeley.
That's right.
And the big game was played this weekend, right?
That's right, and you went to UC Berkeley too, then.
What do you think about your coach not going for touchdowns instead of those 3 field goals?
No comment.
Okay, thank you. Anyway, we're going to go to public comment now, and then we'll entertain discussion again. We'll call 3 people at a time. Will Nicholas, Catherine Butler, and Adam Lane.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Will Nicholas. I'm with the LA County Department of Public Health, where I direct the Health Impact Evaluation Center. And given that the Clean Up, Green Up policy includes a reference to health impact assessments as part of oil refinery projects in the affected areas, I'm here today to help inform the members of the council and the public about what HIA is, and how it would help, how it would add value to this policy. So it's basically what HIA is an analytic tool for assessing the potential health impacts of policies and plans outside of the traditional health sector, and providing evidence-based recommendations for how to mitigate potential harms and also enhance potential benefits to human health. Over 300 HIAs have been conducted in the United States, in almost every state, and many of them in the resource and energy sectors, of which oil refineries are a part. In fact, it's the third largest category of HIAs that have been conducted. While most HIAs are voluntary in nature, was that 2 minutes? Was that?
It's 1 minute. We have
I
1
thought I had
minute
2
per
minutes.
speaker. Yes.
Okay.
Sorry
All right.
about that.
Well, okay.
Yeah.
Well, let me just then quickly address the HIA versus the HRA distinction. Frankly, the HRA is often used as a quantitative method as part of a health impact assessment. Health impact assessments use a variety of quantitative methods for assessing health impacts, of which HRA could be one if it's dealing specifically with a chemical exposure.
Thank you very much.
But there's other there are other factors beyond those that can be addressed through an HRA that are relevant in these situations.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you. And as a reminder to public speakers, there's 1 minute on the clock. That's Catherine Butler and Adam Lane.
Hi, my name is Katie Butler with the Los Angeles Department of Public Health. I've been conducting health risk assessments for 9 years and health impact assessments for 3 years. So I wanted to share a bit about my experience. HIA is a newer tool that has been used in recent decades to address the importance of social and economic health determinants. And I want you to consider the percentages of different determinants and how they affect our total health. So recent research has determined 10% of the physical environment affects our health. That 10% is the chemical toxicity that would be addressed by a health risk assessment. 20% is social and economic factors that would be addressed in the health impact assessment, as well as 30% is health behavior. Health impact assessment also helps us address those types of health behaviors that could change or be different as a result of a project.
Thank you.
So the health impact
Thank
assessment
you.
for oil projects in specific would allow for a more cumulative exposure approach.
Okay, great.
Thanks.
Thank you. Adam Lane, Elizabeth Blaney, Veronica Padilla, and Daryl Molina Sarmiento.
Good afternoon. My name is Adam Lane. I'm here representing the LA Business Council. We're a research and advocacy organization with over 400 members representing various businesses across Los Angeles, many of whom are leaders in sustainable business practices. We've been a key supporter of Clean Up Green Up as a member of the business stakeholder group, and we request your support in passing this motion. The Clean Up Green Up initiative was carefully and thoughtfully developed with input from key community members and stakeholders to ensure that it would not only protect the health of residents in 3 of LA's most polluted communities, but that it would also help alleviate any difficulties in complying with new regulations for businesses. We're supportive that the initiative seeks to combine economic incentives and business assistance, which will help businesses capitalize on the opportunity to improve their competitiveness by taking advantage of an array of incentives available to these communities. We believe the proposed ombudsperson position is critical to help support businesses in navigating complying with regulations, and we believe that metrics should be kept on the number of businesses within pilot zones that take advantage of these incentives to measure the success of this position. We encourage the city to fill the suggested additional positions in the Department of Building and Safety, and we respectfully request your aye vote on this position. Thank you.
Thank you. Elizabeth Blaney, Veronica Padilla.
Elizabeth Blaney with Unión de Vecinos. I'm a resident of Boyle Heights, and I wanted to ask you all to please support this ordinance as it goes forward. We've been working with over 200 members in the various communities, along with various numbers of organizations, and have had a lot of increased community engagement. We'd like to recognize the people here in the room who are in support of this, especially high school students from Banning High School who are very interested in it and who have also come out to support this. And we are happy with what is going forward. There are things around enforcement and the ombudsman and the HIA that we look forward to working on going forward, but we'd like to see it go forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Veronica Padilla, Daryl Molina Sarmiento.
Hi, just in interest of time, I just wanted to come up and provide 10 signatures of businesses that do support Clean Up Green Up that we collected in the last week. So thank you very much.
Thank Daryl Molina Sarmiento.
Daryl Molina Sarmiento with Communities for a Better Environment. I just wanted to first say that we definitely want to include the HIA as a cutting-edge public health practice. It's not a substitute for HRA, but a complement that broadens the analysis of indirect impacts to vulnerable communities. It will address the problems of environmental justice in a stronger way than just the HRA. Second, we want to retain the provisions for a conditional use permit for refineries for the people of the city of LA, especially Wilmington, hosting 3 refineries. We deserve the opportunity for democratic participation in these land use decisions. Lastly, we've been endorsed by a broad coalition of 200 public health, environmental, labor, community organizations. All of the representatives from the district support this, and the city has the responsibility and authority to offer this protection. Residents need and deserve this now. We urge you to move forward in adopting the draft ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you. Kent Minalt, Ruben Gonzalez, Alicia Witzling.
Hi, good afternoon, members. I'm Kent Minot. I'm a staff organizer with the Sierra Club, and I've been a long-term supporter of Clean Up, Green Up, as has the Sierra Club. I remember standing in Boyle Heights when you introduced the program, Councilman Huizar, back in 2010. We just want to encourage you to adopt these ordinances and amendments and keep up the progress on Clean Up, Green Up, and especially consider, as you go ahead, conditional use permits for refineries, because these are the largest sources of chemical toxicity in our city area, and also they tend to concentrate those toxicity in the very areas that are part of the Clean Up, Green Up campaign, and also pay particular attention to emerging information about hydrofluoric acid use in refineries as well. Again, thank you so much. I'm Kent Minot with the Sierra Club.
Thank you. Ruben Gonzalez.
Ruben Gonzalez on behalf of the LA Area Chamber of Commerce. I'd like to call your attention once again to the lack of specifics that we see here. We were looking for a system of incentives to help business clean up their operations and take advantage of an ombudsman's office and further incentives. That still isn't here. It still isn't concrete. It's still a maybe. We don't have a long-lasting ombudsman office. It's in a political office, so it's akin to the whims of whatever that office may be. We don't know what's going to happen with the enforcement entity. We don't have a plan for enforcement. We don't know what that is. Again, HRA versus HIA. HRA, an objective process. HIA, a subjective process. We get further information from the CLA and CEO, but it doesn't answer the questions. Where has this specifically been used in this kind of situation before? Show us examples. Show us where we should use it. The reality is that HIAs do not have strict methodology. They are simply a blank canvas that any jurisdiction can throw in any ideas that they want. It's a subjective tool used for political leverage on issues. It's not real. So again, please do not move this forward until we have actual, real commitments in this document and in this proposal and in this program. Thank you.
Thank you. Alicia Witzling, Sarah Rascon, Patty Senecal, Brisa Sotelo Vargas.
Hi, Alicia Witzling with LA Chamber. I'm here actually with a coalition of 20 business organizations on Clean Up, and we're concerned about it in its currently drafted form. We are recommending that the requirement for a conditional use permit be removed or changed to a zoning administrator approval process, which would be subsection X of the code. The HIA be removed from the CUP and replaced with a more appropriate HRA, that incentives be put in place, that, and as Ruben mentioned, that implementation be delayed, that takes into account triggers like an enforcement plan and structure for the ombudsman. Again, the original council motion cited a need for policies that streamline development and attract businesses while encouraging the industrial sector use sustainable operational activities. This current draft of the proposal still does not achieve these goals. We have issues with the conditional use permit. We have issues with the health impact assessment, which would change from application to application, and there's still no incentives included in this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Sarah Rascon, Patty Senecal.
Speaking as part of the coalition as well of 20 business organizations, we're concerned about Clean Up, Green Up in its current form. The business community has been contributing to the discussion since its inception. However, they've had little impact. So we do recommend the requirements for a conditional use permit be removed or changed to a ZA approval The HRA be removed from the CUP and be replaced with more appropriate HRA as well. Oil refineries are currently allowed by right in M3 zones, and this ordinance proposes that new or existing refineries expanding operations beyond the current property line must apply for a CUP. Thank you.
Thank you. Patty Senecal, Brisa Sotelo Vargas.
Thank you. Patty Senecal, representing Western States Petroleum Association, or WSPA. I echo the comments of my colleagues from the Business Coalition. We're part of that. I won't repeat. I would like to state strong support that the existing refinery operations not be part of the CUP. These are the most heavily regulated industries you'll ever find, and we have more examinations, more entities coming in for audits in some cases than days in the year. I would also like to echo the comments from the city attorney in terms of his views for HRA. It is definitely a well-defined process for CEQA, and we don't see the need for an HIA on top of the robust HRA process. We've been involved in Cleanup Greenup since the very start, 5 years ago when it started, and meritorious, and we supported the original goals, and was looking for incentives to help businesses that are perhaps unaware of all the regulations and what is out there. So again, we support Cleanup Greenup in its original form.
Ms. Senecal, Councilmember Harris Dawson has a question.
I just wanted to clarify, so when a refinery expands its operations, the position of you and the previous speakers is that it should not be required to have a CUP?
The original, or the language that came to you from Planning Commission was that existing refinery operations should not be part of the CUP.
And that's what you and the previous speakers want.
The existing refinery operations should not be part of CUP. We also think that if they were expanding, and building a new refinery, probably not going to happen. But again, existing operations should not be part of a CUP process.
Thank you. Brisa Sotelo Vargas, Dustin Baton, Sarah Mitchell, Bill Lamar.
Good afternoon, Brisa Sotelo with Tesoro Refining and Marketing. I'm here to talk about the concerns that a health impact assessment would be required for any applicant, yet the city has not provided any guidance in terms of scope, process, or methodology for that. In support of and echoing the comments by the city attorney, I agree that the HRA is a scientific tool and has qualitative training, whereas the HIA relies on only qualitative analysis. Therefore, I ask that you move forward with an HRA, which is required under AQMD Rule 1401 and the risk assessment procedures for 1401 and 212. Thank you.
Thank you. Dustin Batten, Sarah Mitchell, Bill Lamar.
Good afternoon. I'm Dustin Batten with BizFed, the Los Angeles County Business Federation, and I'm also here speaking on a part of the coalition of 20 business organizations. So I support everything that they have stated in advance, and then a couple other points to continue with. As it pertains to the environmental effects and outcomes, the proposal does little to address pollution in the city. Most of the requirements in the ordinance, like fencing and noise, are completely unrelated to the cumulative environmental effects rationale for the Cleanup Greenup ordinance. There is no evidence showing that any of the requirements are necessary or have any environmental benefit. There is no emphasis on enforcement for businesses that currently operate outside of current rules and regulations. The report back states that new staff would need to be hired for enforcement. It relies on the AIM program under LADBS that will not expand to handle the increased workload that this will bring, and a commercial and residential code enforcement program, which is complaint-driven. However, it is not clear if inspection protocols would be in play. More clarity needed here, as well as assurances that complaints aren't organized to disrupt businesses who are abiding by the law simply because the public doesn't like them. Thank you.
Thank you. Sarah Mitchell, Bill Lamar.
Good afternoon, council members. I'm Sarah Mitchell. I'm with the Valley Industry and Commerce Association. We represent more than 400 businesses in the San Fernando Valley, and all of our legally operating community-aware businesses in the Northeast Valley are extremely concerned with how this ordinance is being touted versus what the reality of it is. Originally, we understood Cleanup Greenup to be a mechanism that would enforce current regulations on illegally operating businesses, and I don't think anyone here disagrees with that mission. But as usual, the intent does not come out correctly with the result. What we have in front of us is just a miles-long list of mandates and costs and only vague promises with very little actual details about what incentives our businesses that are law-abiding would receive and the support that they would receive from the office. In fact, we have yet to hear concrete evidence that these new but also redundant regulations would really make a difference in these pilot neighborhoods. Our businesses have talked to us about this and said that they understand the intent behind the ordinance, but the wording in front of us is only unreasonable and unfriendly regulations that are going to affect only our law-abiding businesses. Thank you.
Bill Lamar, Dan Hoffman, and Heather Anderson.
Yes, good afternoon. I'm Bill Lamar, Executive Director of the California Small Business Alliance. I submitted our comment letter to you yesterday. In it, we cited our concerns on Clean Up, Green Up, and how it has morphed from its original concept of addressing the cumulative impacts of air toxics and criteria pollutants to one that is full of onerous, costly restrictions and prohibitions on small businesses that want to establish themselves or expand operations in these three communities. This ordinance will deter those decisions and do nothing to improve air quality and toxic exposure from what it is today. There are no protocols for enforcement, education, incentives, or metrics for measuring success. We recommend that you order a professionally mediated discussion among stakeholders to resolve these issues and get this program back on track. Thank you.
Dan Hoffman.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Dan Hoffman. I'm the Executive Director for the Wilmington Chamber of Commerce and a member of the coalition. I'm here before you this afternoon to ask you to remove the HIA and replace it with the HRA. I think the logic that was presented earlier at this meeting just makes perfect sense and need not say anymore. Also like to see real and new incentives put in place for our small businesses. That was, I think, part of the initial motion was to incentivize businesses to clean up and to do a better job and to make businesses that aren't legal, and to bring in more tax money for the city. None of that's happening here. And I think lastly, what I'd like to add is that unfortunately there's nothing measurable here that lets us know how much we're taking off of the grid, how much water we're saving, how much we're recycling. I think that's an area that if we're really concerned about the environment, we should address. And ultimately, what I'd like to ask you today, until this can be put in place, that is, we know the budget and everything, that we postpone. Thank you.
Thank you. Heather Anderson from CD 15.
Good afternoon, council members. Heather Anderson, representing Councilman Buscaino of the 15th District. Councilman Buscaino supports Clean Up, Green Up. He wanted to take this additional opportunity to thank everyone involved in the creation of Clean Up, Green Up for their work and dedication. Department of City Planning, Liberty Hill Foundation, and the UCLA Luskin Community Scholars, as well as local stakeholders in the business community and environmental groups. Wilmington Chamber of Commerce, Communities for a Better Environment, thank you for staying in communication with Councilman Buscaino throughout the process. At the last Plum hearing, Councilman Buscaino requested a report back to address what he felt was missing from Clean Up, Green Up, focused enforcement of current code and environmental regulations on existing businesses, as well as unpermitted and illegal operations in the three pilot neighborhoods. We feel lucky that the city, for the most part, already has systems in place to address these issues. I'm speaking, of course, of AIM and PACE at Building and Safety and the Environmental Justice Strike Force, coordinated by City Attorney's Office. But our experience is that our current resources do not adequately address the issues. The councilman feels that the report before you today is a step in the right direction. Clearly, in moving forward, we have identified one of the many roles of the ombudsperson in enforcement. The ombudsperson will be in the field, will be able to identify possible issues and refer cases to Building and Safety for code compliance investigation and to the Environmental Justice Unit of the City Attorney's Office for investigation of environmental regulation compliance. Building and Safety and City Attorney staff need to track the increase in workload from the ombudsperson in the three pilot neighborhoods in order to understand if there are additional staffing resources needed to effectively enforce current code and regulations in those three pilot neighborhoods. The tone of this focused enforcement should be aligned with that of CUGU. We want enforcement to be about assisting businesses to come into compliance where possible. The councilman recommends Plum approve Cleanup Greenup today. We hope to move forward with this important policy, having faith that we can continue the discussion of how to effectively enforce current code and environmental regulations in the 3 pilot neighborhoods with the ombudsperson at the center of the work. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. We have one final card, Christine Runhel.
Good afternoon. Speaking on behalf of a coalition of over 20 business organizations and also representing the Building Industry Association, we oppose the current draft of Cleanup Greenup. We would like to see the following amendments. First, the requirement for a CUP be removed or changed to a ZA approval, subsection X of the code. The HIA be removed from the CUP and replaced with the more appropriate HRA. Also, that incentives be put in place. Currently, no new incentives are being offered apart from ones already available from regulatory agencies and utilities. And finally, that the implementation be delayed that takes into account triggers like an enforcement plan and structure for the ombudsman. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from colleagues?
I know it's come up from time to time, and the idea of ZA approval versus a CUP, if we can just have staff address that for a moment.
Hi, Hagu Solomon Carey for the record. Can you repeat your question? I couldn't hear you.
It came up in the last hearing as well, and first of all, let me take a step back and thank staff for submitting all the responses to. I know I asked a lot of those questions that came back and required a lot more work, so I really appreciate it. It's very helpful. So I want to thank you for that. It's come up from time to time, and I know a lot of the stakeholders are anxious to move this forward, and at the same time, though, some of the folks that have suggested first incentives, when I want to bring that up, I don't think anything has been identified for what type of incentive, so I'd like something to come back. Doesn't mean we can hold this up, but we can even move that forward on a separate track. I'd still like to see some type of incentives come in, and I think that's really important, so I don't want to lose sight of that. And I think there's been a lot of speakers that have suggested that, and I believe that even those folks who want this to move forward are still okay with incentives. They just want the businesses cleaned up. With or without incentives, they want it done. So I don't think anybody opposes incentives. So I'd like to see what kind of opportunities and incentives can come back, and maybe, again, under a separate track. If we could just perhaps report back on that at a very near Plum agenda on the incentive part of it without holding this up. We can always add it to it. So that's one part. And then the CUP versus a ZA approval. If you can just speak to that and why the direction to go into a CUP versus a ZA approval is necessary.
Sure, Hagu Solomon for the record. Just to clarify, there's actually been several incentives that have been identified and collected with our collaborators at the Liberty Hill Foundation, and the intention was always that that collection of regional, federal, state, regional, and local incentives across several sectors would be taken in-house so that it could be a city-owned document and a resource that the ombudsperson would disperse. So the comment about incentives is actually very well documented, and I'm happy to share that.
That'd be great. And we're going to make sure that that menu of incentives, if you will, are available, and the ombudsman person will be and have that available at their disposal to share and work with the businesses and offer and work through some of those opportunities as well. Will that be the role?
Absolutely. And we heard, in fact, from the business community that the hardest challenge around incentives is the time and effort it takes to find the ones that are applicable and whether the return on investment is really worth it. So part of that heavy lift, we envision the ombudsperson would take on, and really be a resource for identifying what type of incentives a specific business could leverage, and helping them, lay the groundwork for availing themselves. Additionally, incentives change, obviously, as we know, as new legislation comes on board and new monies become available. So keeping that up to date is something that we felt strongly that the city should house and particularly make available to these three communities, but, at large, I think, for the entire city. With regards to the conditional use permit, whether it's a ZA or a CPC decision body, it would still be a conditional use permit. The section of the code they're citing, 1224U, is for the City Planning Commission to decide upon. The other sections are also still under the same code section and are still a conditional use permit.
So it's just a matter of whether it's CPC or ZA. Is that correct?
Deborah Cahan, City Planning. Yes, and that the decision also came from, or the recommendation also comes from the idea that an oil refinery is something that has impacts across the city and would be elevated to the level of decision making that the City Planning Commission offers.
But I think at the original plan was to have the appeals heard by the Area Planning Commission, then to City Council. The Citywide Planning Commission changed that to have it heard by the ZA. Is that correct?
So actually that process that was changed at CPC was for the green zone development standards and not for the CUP. So the CUP process was always the intention was always to have it reviewed by CPC, and that never changed.
Okay, and at the last Plum meeting, we actually changed that back, correct? So
for the larger...
That's the amended version in Plum right now as it stands, okay. Well, thank you. And just one question on my end. The HIA, assuming that moves forward, when you do an HRA, there's kind of an industry for that. There's certain firms that people use. On the HIA, is there similar type of firms? Is that standard, or who does those?
Certainly. So this is Hago Solomon Carey for the record, and there are several organizations and institutions that do HIAs locally. In the past, we've seen Health Impact Partners, UCLA School of Public Health, community health councils, Partners for Prevention, different COGs or associations of governance have in the past done HIAs, and I also have some examples here. I'd also like to add for the record that around the world, the oil industry does HIAs very conventionally and has been doing them since the early 2000s, so it's not that unique. And I'd also further like to add that there are a very strict methodology for how HIAs are conducted, though it can be flexible based on time or amount of money. So there is a very clear methodology, and I have that information here if you'd like to hear it, but we've also outlined a 6-step guidance for how that HIA would be conducted within the conditional use permit to avoid any confusion or conflict or lack of clarity.
Okay, thank you. And in terms of timing, there was some suggestion that we postpone the implementation or the effective date of this ordinance till July of 2016. But we really don't know when this is going to come back, correct? I mean, we're approving a draft suggested ordinance by the planning department. That still has to go to council, then back to the city attorney's office for drafting, then back to Plum, and then back to council. So there's still a lot of steps that need to be taken, and obviously, if approved, we would want that to be done as quickly as possible, but we really don't know when that will be. So I'm just trying to determine, and speaking out loud, whether it makes sense to put an effective date or to wait to see when the ordinance comes back and see if it's more appropriate at that time. Any thoughts on that from the planning department?
Yeah, Hago Solomon Carey. Like you said, there are several steps still remaining in the process, and I think the process that we've undergone up until now over the past 2 years has really helped us narrow in and focus on exactly what the planning department can effectuate in the code changes. We've established all other requisite elements of the original motion, dating back to the 2012 staff report that was written. So it's our opinion that it should go forward.
Okay, thank you. Well, thank you. Colleagues, yes, Mr. Mejia.
Nothing. Just wanted to give you an opportunity to take action.
Okay, thank you. So we'll move this item to council. It is the draft suggested ordinance by the planning department with a request to have a report back from the planning department on the incentives that could be provided. And we'll hear that item as soon as possible in Plum to get a sense of what those are. And also, I just want to clarify that at the last Plum meeting, we made a couple of amendments, and that's what we're moving today. And one of them was the change of the appeal process going back to its regular course, not what CPC did. Okay. Any?
So Councilman, formally we'll request the city attorney to prepare the ordinance, and as far as the CAO CLA report, we can simply note and file that since it was for informational purposes.
Okay, well, no one filed a CAO and CLA report.
Yes, Council. And I think there was also a building and safety ordinance that was submitted, and we can also forward that to city attorney as to form and legality. It was a technical ordinance that was submitted.
We'll do that as well. Okay. And also the report back on the incentives.
Yes, Council.
Okay, that's part of the motion. Thank you. Any objections? So ordered. Thank you. Next item, please.
What item would you like to consider, Councilman?
If we could go now in the order of the agenda, which is item number 1. Go to item number 1, please.
Yes, Councilman. Item 1 is a motion by Councilman Wesson and yourself. It's instructing the planning department and city attorney in consultation with CD10 to prepare an ICO for the Wilshire Vista area.
Thank you. Do we need to hear a staff presentation? No, this is a motion.
We can simply adopt it, Councilman,
Yeah.
if that's your wish.
We have a number of speakers here. You have 1 minute to speak. And Sarah Pearson, Dr. Lance Williams, Sharon Montrose. Sarah Pearson, there you are. Dr. Lance Williams and Sharon Montrose. Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Sarah Pearson. I live in Wilshire Vista, and I'm just here to request that you please approve and adopt our request for an ICO modeled after the Beverly Grove RFA. I'm a realtor in Los Angeles, and I've seen what happened to Beverly Grove. It was completely destroyed, the neighborhood split by all the huge developments that went on. And now our neighborhood is being targeted since those other ones have now become protected. So we're under imminent threat, and I ask that you please go ahead and offer us that protection. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Lance Williams.
Good afternoon, Sherry Zwar and committee members. I've been a resident of the Wilshire Vista neighborhood for 31 years, and I've previously spoken before the Plum Committee in my former capacity as Executive Director of the U.S. Green Building Council, LA Chapter, in which we help the city to provide information on various green ordinances, green building ordinances in the city. Respectfully, it's my opinion that it's imperative that you act favorably on this motion. We have a united neighborhood with a rich history and a strong desire to maintain our neighborhood's integrity as it currently exists. The ICO is the right step for us right now, and our initiative is modeled after the Beverly Grove RFA, and as evidenced by the people who are here, we stand in solidarity to make this happen. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Sharon Montrose, Spencer Starr, Sidney Williams.
Good afternoon. My name is Sharon Montrose. I'm a stakeholder and homeowner in Wilshire Vista and a member of the Wilshire Vista Neighborhood Association. Over the last several years, I've watched established neighborhoods all over my native Los Angeles destroyed by the proliferation of large, out-of-scale McMansions, and as you know, those neighborhoods fought back, receiving interim control ordinances to protect them from further mansionization while the city works to amend the BMO. But unfortunately for us, when McMansion developers were pushed out of these ICO neighborhoods, they turned their focus to Wilshire Vista. And suddenly, there I was, watching my very own neighborhood get destroyed. I thank Council President Wesson for listening to our plea for help. We need it, we deserve it. Please approve and adopt our ICO request, modeled after the Beverly Grove RFA. We simply cannot watch one more house get demolished and replaced by an out-of-scale, heartless structure that blocks our light, steals our privacy, and threatens the rich history and community spirit that Wilshire Vista residents and our vibrant neighborhood council have worked so hard to preserve since 1921. Thank you.
Spencer Starr.
Hi there. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I've lived in Los Angeles for 16 years and in Wilshire Vista for the last 10. I was pleasantly surprised, having moved from the suburbs of Colorado, that Los Angeles, this behemoth of a city, was actually comprised of small neighborhoods, each having its own character, charm, and sense of community. But all that is being systematically undermined by greedy developers looking to tear down original homes and erect McMansions in their place. Mansionization is destroying neighborhoods as fast as developers can close escrow. The oversized boxes they build are out of scale with the surrounding homes. Their line-to-line construction robs neighboring homes of light, fresh air, and privacy. And most importantly, they damage and disrupt communities by fomenting hostility between McMansion buyers and resentful neighbors. Wilshire Vista is at risk now more than ever, as the ICOs issued earlier this year for our sister neighborhoods ended our boundaries of San Vicente and Fairfax, which leaves us sitting ducks. Please approve an ICO modeled on the Beverly Grove RFA to protect Wilshire Vista. Thank you for the time and the opportunity to speak here today.
Thank you. We just took, your name, sir, was Spencer Starr, right? Sydney Williams?
Yes.
Tracy Considine, Barbara Wells.
Thank you. I am here to echo what my neighbors have said. We live in a beautiful neighborhood. If you've ever driven Pico to San Vicente, Hauser to Fairfax, you know it's a beautiful neighborhood built in the 20s and 30s, and we have an influx of these big boxes being built. There's no regard for privacy, for light, for aesthetics, nothing. And I have nothing against enlarging a home. I have seen several places where people went up, but they keep it in character with the existing neighborhood, and they don't just block out everything with no regard. So for the other person, so the neighbor. So we're asking that you approve the ICO and model it after the Beverly Grove RFA. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Tracy, Barbara Wells.
Hi, I'm Tracy Considine, Pico Neighborhood Council Land Use Chair. In the past years, if we had more than 5 stakeholders at our meeting, it was worth putting in the newspaper. Boy, that's changed. Recently, we've had land use meetings with standing room only and board meetings that feel like town halls. Mansionization is one of our biggest hot-button issues. Each time a house is bulldozed, emails fly, nextdoor.com catches on fire, and stakeholders call for help. Some of the areas mobilized early and got ICOs, but now our unprotected areas are the new targets for mansionization. These stakeholders are mad and sad, but on 2 fronts, you can make them glad. First, listen today to Wilshire Vista and Pickfair Village residents and consider their requests for temporary protection. Next, address mansionization citywide once and for all. Amend the BMO this spring, and please, let's get it right this time.
Thank you. Barbara Wells, Ruth Scribner, Elizabeth Carlin from CD10.
Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Barbara Wells. I'm a former vice president of the Wilshire Vista Neighborhood Association. However, I'm here today to speak on behalf of my neighbors and myself who want to maintain the charm and appeal of our neighborhood as it currently exists. Our families chose to live in Wilshire Vista because we appreciate that our section of the city is characterized by single-family homes that provide adequate light and proportional outdoor space for young families, for single professionals, and for retired citizens like myself, all alike to thrive. We are quite anxious about the increasing encroachment of developers who have little or no concern regarding the destruction of an essential ingredient that forms the nature of our community. Architectural coherence in our neighborhood is a value we would like to preserve. We please approve and adopt our ICO request modeled after the Beverly Grove RFA. Thank you.
Ruth Scribner, Elizabeth Carlin.
Hi, my name is Ruth Scribner, and when I moved to Los Angeles 30 years ago, I had no idea that Los Angeles possessed such a rich architectural heritage, and that one day I would actually live in one of these homes in the Wilshire Vista neighborhood. Now, it is completely heartbreaking to see these treasures torn down at an alarming rate and replaced with completely out-of-scale structures. There was a recent teardown in our neighborhood, and out of frustration and sadness, I dragged several bricks from the demolition site home. They now reside in my garden. Please protect our neighborhood by approving and adopting our ICO request, the one modeled after the Beverly Grove RFA. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Elizabeth Carlin.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members. I'm here before you on behalf of Council President Wesson to ask you for your support of this motion. The Wilshire Vista neighborhood has asked for an ICO to ban construction, just like the 15 neighborhoods that were part of the first ICO back in March. Wilshire Vista has clearly asked for an ICO like the regulations set forward in the Beverly Grove Residential Floor Area District. We ask for your support, members. We ask and request that you move this item forward. And for the record, in addition to our speakers that are here today, I've also received emails from some residents who couldn't be with us, and I'd ask if I could support that, send that to the record.
Thank you. With that, are there any questions or comments? No. We'll move to refer this to staff. What's the appropriate motion?
Actually, Councilman, it would be an adoption of the ordinance because it's a land use legislative action, so the council would need to...
Oh, move it to council,
Yes,
to full
sir.
council. Okay. So we'll move this to council. Thank you. My note said staff, so I just did what the note said. Thank you. We'll move this to full council. Next item number 2, please.
Item 2, Councilman, is a motion Wesson Weezer. It's another ICO in CD10. This is the Pickfar Village area.
Okay. Debbie Gagan, and there's been a go ahead, Debbie Gagan, go ahead.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Debbie Gaughan.
All good.
And I live in Pickfair Village, excuse me, which is in CD10, and we are the little sister of Wilshire Vista. So all those concerns and words that Wilshire Vista people just said, we also echo that, and we would also like to have an ordinance, an ICO modeled after the Beverly Grove RFO, which in particular is Beverly Grove Ordinance number 182754. And we understand that there is a new draft for the BMO that's currently taking place, and we do appreciate that that's moving forward. But in the meantime, we love our little corner of the world, even though we're the little sister, and we want to have our voices heard also. So please support the ICO. Thank you.
Thank you. Elizabeth Carlin.
We have another member of our community who put a card in. Can she speak first?
Sure.
Claudia Bayard, is she on the list?
Yes, I didn't. If you could bring a card up, please.
Sorry that I'm late. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I'm more or less here for the stakeholders of Pickfair Village. Recently we had a meeting Saturday, and from what I'm getting from half of our stakeholders, some are disagreeable and some are not. I'm here to speak in behalf of the ones that are more or less of disagreement. We did receive 300 signatures for the ICO, but we do have signatures that will be sent to the commissioner regarding the stakeholders that are against it. So right now we are approximately 50-50. Some for it and some are not. So I am speaking regarding the stakeholders of Pickfair Village at our last meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Carlin?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members. Thank you so much for your time. I'm before you on this item to ask that this be continued for 60 days. As was noted and came to our attention, there is not one voice and there is dissension, so we would respectfully ask for a continuance so that we may talk with our neighborhood and be in dialogue with the department on this.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So at the request of CD10, we'll continue this item for 60 days and schedule accordingly. Thank you very much. If we could go to item number 9, please.
Item 9, Councilman, is a hardship exemption application from the fast food restaurant ICO in CD10. And the application was filed by Mark Hook.
Okay. We could hear from the applicants, please. Mark Hauk.
Good afternoon, everyone. We're here today to ask for you to look favorably.
And just for your information, applicants or appellants on.
Oh, I am the applicant.
Have 5 minutes. So
Thank you. My name is Mark Hauk. I am the applicant in this case and the owner at 5577 West Adams Boulevard, which is in CD10. We're asking today for you to look favorably upon our hardship exemption. Our intent is to add enough of a footprint to the existing food service structure so that we can build enough refrigeration to open a health-oriented restaurant for the neighborhood, something that we found is sorely lacking. In order for us to do that, we have run into certain space constraints. The lot is very small. The kitchen itself also is very small. And if we want to be able to serve the kinds of food that the neighborhood needs, farmers market, local, fresh, seasonal, we need to be able to expand the footprint so that we can have large enough refrigeration to do that. The issues that we've been running into can be enumerated by our architect who's here. If you have those questions, I also do have visual aids if you'd like to see that. But based on the space constraints that we run into because of a small lot and a small building, we ask that you grant the hardship exemption.
Great. Thank you. We're okay with the presentation as presented and the documents presented to us.
You don't want to see the menu? It's great.
Oh.
You want to see the menu? There we go.
Harris Dawson will look at the menu.
In addition, I've brought with me, if you like, letters of consent from the majority of our adjoining neighbors, as well as letters of support from the stakeholders and people in the neighborhood that have been bugging us for a year to open up the restaurant. We don't need another job. We're busy enough. But the neighborhood needs to have this kind of food if it's going to mature into the kind of neighborhood that we all want it to be. And having good food for kids to eat is a significant part of that, at least in our estimation.
Great, thank you.
Okay, are you getting hungry yet?
Mm-hmm. Good stuff. Yeah. Carlos Amado.
Yeah, it's all homemade, made from scratch, farmers market every day. It's something that we want to support. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. Carlos Amado.
Good afternoon. I'm a property owner and neighbor of Mr. Mark. My mother and I own a fourplex under the rent control, which is right next to his property. Mark has shared with me his plans, and we love the conceptual plan, but we're coming to you because before Mark bought the property, we had a lot of problems with the owner and the property itself because it's very small. And I just would like to request the City Council that please make sure that whatever happens to the property, whether Mark and his wife decide later to rent it or to sell it, that the problems that we have is like people who owned before the property used to congregate and run business on the parking lot. A lot of noise and a lot of interference with our peaceful enjoyment of our living standards was being affected. We also request that our other concerns is parking and hours of operation, which Mr. Mark explained to me, but we would love to see if you could please make sure that whatever happens in the future, this property is enforced about the noise and parking regulations. Thank you.
Thank you. Jordan Barrowheim, CD10. Did I pronounce the last name correctly?
Thank you. Good afternoon, members of the Plum Committee. My name is Jordan Baruchim from Council President Herb Wesson's office. I don't have much to say except for there's a lot of push from the community to bring this type of product into the district. We hope that this would be a catalytic project. As the applicant mentioned, this is a farmer's market type product, and we're very excited to see this move along. So we please ask for your support in moving this matter along to full council. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, any questions or comments? None? Okay, we will approve this item, and it's going to council, correct? Sir. Okay, thank you very much. So ordered. Item number 7, please.
Item 7, Councilman, is a report from the Cultural Heritage Commission recommending inclusion of the Fifth Church of Christ Scientist as a historic cultural monument in CD4.
Before we go on this item, I'm looking at the cards, and I only see support cards, I believe. I'm not seeing any opposition. And we are going to lose quorum. One of our members has to leave, and so I would suggest, if we're inclined to support this, to have it move forward. So we are asking that if you are so inclined, if we could waive the public comments, or do people still feel inclined to speak? Waive? Okay, because we're inclined to support it. It's my sense. Obviously, we don't know until we vote, but we're inclined to support. But if we stay here and listen to other comments, we're going to lose quorum and not be able to send this with a full vote to council. So why don't we do this? Are there any objections to this item after review of the reports? No? Okay, we will approve this item, if that's okay. Anybody who submitted a card, you have a right to speak, but I didn't see enough. Okay, so that's fine. Okay, we will approve this item and send to council.
I have a letter from Zev Yaroslavsky.
Okay, you could submit that letter for the record. Okay. Thank you very much. So ordered on item number 7. That item is approved. Okay. Next item is, thank you. Next item is number 8, and we have the same issue.
In item 8, Councilman, it's again a Cultural Heritage Commission inclusion of the Lookout Mountain Air Force Station in CD4.
Okay.
Historic monument.
Anybody who submitted cards opposed to this, we will do the same. Any opposition to this? No? So we will approve this item as well. So ordered. Item number 8. Okay, and then that brings us to 2 final items, which are receive and file items. They are, well, actually, one of them is a...
Actually, one is if you were to hear it, a note and file, but number 5 contains recommendations from planning.
Okay, item number 5, if you could read that into the record, please.
Sure. Item 5, Councilman, is a report from City Planning relative to making public benefit findings and authorizing portions of the Recode LA web-based zoning code system as an open source community and amendments to the existing contract with Code Studio. The item has also been duly referred to the Trade Committee.
Okay, thank you. We will, any objections on this item? Seeing none, so ordered. So we've approved item number 5, along with the city plan recommendations. We will now go to item number 4, which is a presentation, and if we lose quorum on that, we're going to receive and file anyway. So we're at item 4 now. Okay.
Presentation by City Planning relative to the quarterly report on the Recode LA web-based zoning code system.
Hi, good afternoon. Tom Rothman from the Planning Department. This is supposed to be a quarterly update on Recode, and my presentation today, I would say, is about 15 minutes long. I could speed through it. It's up to you what you would like to have. I know seem like you're short on time. I don't have I have one for myself. I could make copies and give it to everybody. It's really to tell you where we've been, where we're going, what's going on this year and next year, and the progress we've made on the downtown code and the progress we've made on single-family zones. So it's a pretty comprehensive.
We don't need the whole 15-minute presentation, but if you could just go through it rather quickly. We do want an update, but if you could also provide us, send to our offices a copy of the presentation to each of the council members on Plum, please.
Certainly.
But if you could just go through it quickly, anything that we should be aware of. And
Okay, I can make it 5 minutes, under
Okay,
5 minutes.
5
And
minutes
we've
is
also
fine.
been going to all your council offices and giving them a more in-depth analysis. So this is just a timeline. This is a 5-year project. We're well into year 3. Right now we are working on our downtown code. So we're having a standalone zoning code just for the Central City and Central City North community plans. Again, we're working with our community planners to create new zones for downtown, and we're creating new general development standards. We are also consolidating our processes and procedures citywide. That's a big step forward. And we're working simultaneously to create, as you've heard today on the previous items, we are not only working on the ICOs, but we're also working on updating our baseline mansionization ordinance. But on the third rail of that, we are creating new single-family zones in RECODE to be used as soon as possible. Again, this is our current zoning thread. We just want to give you a brief overview of what it looks like today, these queue conditions, these overlay districts, and a variety of places where you have to search the zoning code to find out what your zoning is on the ground. And we're proposing to move it to a little more of a comprehensive zone. So 4 components of a new zone. 1 would be context, sort of the organizing mechanism. 2 would be form, what the building would generally look like, the physical constraints of a new building. A possible frontage component of a new zone, which would be how a building interfaces with the public realm. And then the most interesting part of our new zoning system is to untangle our uses that are allowed from what the building looks like. So separate use packages, and these components can be moved and manipulated so that we can fine-tune our zoning a little bit better than what we're doing today. And these are just examples from what a zoning code page might look like. So as you know what our code looks like today, this is a lot more intuitive. That first column would be the basic lot placement and where how the lot is configured. The second would be where the building would go on the lot. The third would be the form of the building generally, and that last column would be the frontage. We will have a variety of frontage options, stoops, storefronts, general warehouse, industrial, so we can slap them on or leave them off for the developer to choose. Again, more pages. This is a page of what our frontage options would look like. So here on the left is maybe a shop front, which has regulations for fenestration and placing. And as you see, the front here would be a primary street, or what we're calling an A street, where the components of our new zoning system would be more pronounced, whereas on the side street, we may not want to see so much windows and so many entrances. That would be the B street, and we can accommodate that with our context and our forms. And then again, this is a new way of zoning to combine our multiple uses, our many uses that are allowed in our zones. Right now we have a very lengthy enumerated use list. What we'd like to do is package them and provide the more appropriate packages to go into our zoning systems. So here is, we're working on our downtown code and some outreach we've been doing with our downtown community planners. And these are different forms that could take place in downtown: high-rise, mid-rise, village, small scale. These are all different types of forms, and then we also have some forms that are specifically single use, maybe more of a large format manufacturing, or maybe on the right there up by the hills by Elysian Valley, a purely residential zone. And here's a way we've started to organize our use packages. So to get this point across, the example would be maybe the form of a building would be high-rise, but perhaps in South Park, that use package would be, even though it would be mixed use, where we would emphasize residential over commercial, and then in the financial district, we would still have the same form of a high-rise, but maybe the use package will be calibrated so that it's mostly office space or commercial. That's how, right now, we don't have that ability. We've got to put on these cues or an overlay district. Here, it's a more nuanced way of zoning. And so you can see we've worked with our community planners to come up with just the right amount of use packages for downtown. And here's an example of what one complete zone might look like, where we have our context, which would be urban. That's not shown here, but our form district here would be high-rise 2, which would have all of the development standards for a building. That's in the left. The frontage package here, there was a frontage package chosen. I guess that's a shop front or maybe general, where it has regulations for window treatment and how again, the building interfaces with the street. And the last piece would be the use district. What type of package? In this case, it's a mixed-use retail, so we could sort of mix and match the right things to come up with the right equation. That's really what this is all about. And then we're just going to go through a couple other examples. Here's another one for in the historic core. We could have a different type of frontage and a use district package that might emphasize entertainment, perhaps. Again, all mixed use in downtown primarily, but we can emphasize certain things. Another example, form district of, yeah, these are just different examples of how we can mix and match. It's all this is. And then lastly, second to lastly, I do want to say that we've been working very quickly on completing some new single-family zones in this same format of context, form, and use, and we can apply these to our ICO areas. So this is a big change from what we've been doing in the past, more calibrated single-family zones, and we're really excited about that. This, again, does not take precedent over our baseline mansionization and baseline hillside fixes. This is to complement that. And lastly, the web code, which you've already sort of made a little action on right before this, but our web code we're very proud of. It's going to be the first in the country to have a smart code where you can type in your address, you can type in your use, and get a customized zoning code that comes out for you. You don't have to read pages and pages of dialogue and hope you caught everything. This is being tagged so that all of the exceptions will come out for you. All of the overlays will come out for you. All of the details. And if there's an old queue condition that we can't get rid of, it will be tagged also.
It's really exciting. I mean,
it's really a big deal. It's very, very exciting.
Ahead of our, I mean,
so this is what a page of our zoning code could look like, will look like, and it's also going to be enabled for your phone.
Get all the information right at your fingertips.
I know I said I spoke quickly.
What's the timeline for this?
Well, the downtown code, in March, is there one more slide coming up, I think? Yeah, in March, we're going to go do our 7 regional forums to sort of explain this thread, this new zoning idea, and also to talk about the downtown code and to talk about the new single-family zones. We'd like to get the new single-family zones and the downtown code to your body next year. Okay. The citywide code, not for another year or two.
And we're on time? Everything, we're on schedule? Yeah. The web code, that comes after it's approved?
The web code we've already developed it. It's already completed. It's just that we have no data to stick into it. We haven't.
So it would come after this, because you first want to know we adopt the new code, right? And
well, it could be done simultaneously.
We could do it simultaneously?
We're trying to show the draft code.
Please identify yourself. I know
for the
who you
record,
are.
this is Eric Lopez. Sorry, yeah. So we're hoping to maybe also debut the new code in this as well, even as draft form, so people can, if we have draft zoning, they'll be able to understand what that proposed zoning would be and it would mean to their property. So we're exploring ways to utilize this even in its draft form.
And last, we do have our zoning advisory committee meetings once a month, and anybody's welcome to attend. It's on the 5th floor in this building. It's always, it's usually a Wednesday. And we have a website. We keep it up to date. It's called recode.la.
Thank you. Well,
you can call anybody in the code studies section.
First, let me thank you. This is a huge undertaking, and we certainly appreciate the work and effort you're putting into this. It's not too easy to look at laws and codes that have existed since 1946 and think about it, whether we should allow that dune buggy to park someplace or not. But the web code itself is very exciting because that's keeping up with the technology that people want to see, and oftentimes people have to drop different books out and talk to different divisions and figure it all out. This is all going to be in the palm of your hands in the near future, and it's going to be a lot more expeditious. We talk a lot about how we could expedite the planning process. This is it. When you have a simpler to read code and something that's technology-based, and you have all the information with one press of the button. So thank you for this. So we have another report coming up one more quarter from now, correct? It's a quarterly report.
We just come when there's we usually come when there's a major milestone like this, but we'll probably come right after our regional forums to give you a feedback of how it went citywide.
Okay,
That's
great.
in March.
Thank you. And if there are any hiccups, any obstacles, or falling behind schedule, we need to hear about that as well, please. Okay? Thank you. We'll note and file this item.
Yes, Council.
Any other items on the agenda?
No, just public comment.
No Herman, no Walsh, no Encino, whatever. So anyway, we'll adjourn this meeting. Thank you.